So this is a video that was sent to me the other day. It's gonna act as kind of like a little improvement on where we were, or not improvement, but like a little eye-opening piece of like trans history. So we're gonna learn about how Nazi Germany impacted queer science. Yeah, we're gonna learn about it. It's gonna be great. Gonna be great. Gonna be great.
Hi, hello, hi.
Okay. Wait, subtitles on. There we go.
So, welcome back to Queer History with Aaron and Sweeney. I'm your host, Aaron and Sweeney. And today, I want to talk to you all a little bit more about some queer history. Last week, we spoke about the Stonewall riots and a little bit about Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. This week, I want to talk a bit about trans medical history and how it was impacted by the World War II Nazi book burnings. Before we get into this, of course, trigger warning, we're talking about World War II Nazi Germany. So, trigger warning Nazis, trigger warning violence against the LGBT community, of course. I just want you to be prepared for what we're going to talk about because I know it's really difficult for a lot of folk to hear. So I wanted to talk about this because it's something a lot of people don't actually know. So I know a lot of people are familiar with the Nazi book burning. So some of you may know the Nazi book burnings were a campaign constructed by the German Student Union to ceremonially burned books in Nazi Germany and Austria in the 1930s. The books targeted for burning were those that were viewed as being subverse or as representing ideologies that opposed Nazism. But a lot of folks don't realize the significant impact that the book burnings had on the trans community, particularly in terms of medical advancements, of gender-affirming surgeries. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So prior to World War II, after World War I, Germany was actually pretty queer. It wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong. There were still some, attempted cures for homosexuality and strange surgical procedures and a whole bunch of really unpleasant things, but there was a relatively open LGBTQ community starting to surface, and although they were still under anti-sodomy laws, law enforcement wasn't really enforcing these rules. So things were kind of looking up. And the queer scene was actually known throughout Europe. I know that there's a word, I think in Italian gay men and women were actually referred to as Berlinese or something like that. I remember hearing that, but anyway, it was a thing that Germany was the queer place to be. But particularly what I'm going to focus on is the medical aspect of it, the medical field and the advancements being made in Germany and what happened there. So I'm going to do my best to pronounce names and places as well as I can, but please forgive me if I'm bad at it. So there was a doctor named Magnus Hirschfeld. Magnus Hirschfeld headed the Institution for Sexology. The actual name of it is Institut für Sexualwissenschaft, but it roughly translates to Institute of Sex Research or Institute of Sexology or Institute for the Science of Sexuality, any of those. So I'm going to use
Hey, I think this is a perfect time to use our sex command. Just as just as a way of tossing that in chat. I do like typing it. All right. Anyway, continuing on.
those words because I am not very good at pronouncing the other one. So the Institute was a nonprofit organization. It was founded in Berlin and it was run by the Scientific Humanitarian Committee, which was a group that campaigned for gay rights and tolerance. So this institute was actually really cool from what I understand. I'm not a historian, but again, just from my research, the institute advocated for sex education, contraception, the treatment of sexually transmitted diseases, and women's emancipation, just to name a few things, which is really wild to think about if you think about the year that this is happening in. This is in the 1930s. And on top of that, at the Institute, trans people were actually...
Yeah, no, I do. I have a command. We're working on having more commands. We also have the fascism command. Yeah. So we're working on having these common talking points, just kind of readily available research so that people can, I can talk about a subject and then I don't have that command. I don't think I can have an OnlyFans command on here. I think that violates Twitch TOS. Yeah. A link to the 14 points of fascism and then a link to the more detailed fascism essay. Yeah. Um, I'm glad that you guys like them. I want to have an. I want to have. My goal is to have another command for gender, another command for William of Orange. Stop being salty that you disagree with a prominent philosopher's 14th point of fascism. Oh gosh, take it up with him. Maybe he's still alive. I don't know. The Riverboat Game chat commands are the bomb. Hell yeah. Um, so yeah, I might put together some more commands. Like I might have a homelessness command to bring down a bunch of data on homelessness because I just compiled a bunch of studies on homelessness. I might also have like socialism and like different terms as well. Maybe I'll do that later tonight. That could be fun. I like that. Um, Trans rights, indeed. This is the place to be if you're for trans rights, my dude. I loved the panel yesterday. I got distracted and missed it live, but went back and watched the VOD. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. My internet went out halfway through the open panel, so I did miss a large chunk of that, but hopefully not too much. All right, let's finish this.
Actually on staff, like openly out trans people. And trans activists were actually given the opportunity to advocate for themselves at conferences hosted by the Institute as well. So it's just really stellar stuff going on there. So at the Institute, various endocrinologic and surgical services were offered, including the first modern sexual reassignment surgeries of the time. Here's something that I particularly find cool. So Hirschfeld actually worked with the Berlin's police department to try to reduce the number
I don't know how to add widgets. I barely know what a widget is, Lady Starfire. You're asking a lot from me.
of arrests of cross-dressed individuals, basically trans women, because they were often arrested because cross-dressing was considered illegal because it was considered to be in correlation with sex work. It was a whole thing, but he was trying to basically reduce the criminalization of trans women and the arrests of trans women through the creation of something that sounds problematic, but just bear with me, by giving them transvestite passes. It was a different time, listen. So these transvestite passes would be issued on behalf of the Institute, and they were to confirm a person's individual desire to wear clothes that are associated with the opposite gender from the one that was assigned to them at birth. And one of the trans women that Hirschfeld actually intervened on the arrest of on behalf of the Institute actually went on to be like one of the first to take advantage of the Institute's pioneering sexual reassignment surgeries. And also Lily Elb, the real-life person that the Danish girl was based off of, she also underwent surgery at the Institute, so that's a cool fun fact. With all of his research, Hirschfeld built a huge library where he wrote and documented and also collected work about queer sexuality, about trans people, and this archive was actually so renowned that people across the world, if they would be doing research on sexual reassignment surgery on trans people in the medical field, they would sometimes even publish their work in German before publishing it in their native language, because it was that well known. That was like the place to go. That was the research center. But unfortunately, on May 6, 1933, Nazi demonstrators raided the libraries of the Institute of Sexology and took more than 20,000 books, and they were burned a couple of days later. Hirschfeld's early publications had laid the groundwork for his profile to rise to fame, until he became one of the most prominent LGBTQ activists in the world at the time. He even co-wrote one of the first gay characters to appear in a film. It was for 1919's film Different from the Others, which I think is cool. That's a long time ago. That's literally 100 years ago. Anyway, in 1904, he published a book, Berlin's Third Sex. This book was an early look at gender variance in 20th century Germany, which apparently had a thriving drag scene and trans community. This was all documented.
Yeah, this is all super cool stuff. And this is why, by the way, there was a how do I put this? In the Weimar Republic, right, in Germany, you had this period of time where there were queer people, there were trans people, you had pioneering research. Yeah. So Linkle, Linky, sorry. You had this period of time where there were queer people, there were trans people, and this was actually for like a good chunk of time, like 20 or so years. It's just that um, during this, you also had a prominent surge in leftist thought, right? You had a lot of socialists coming into power. You had an actual communist faction of the government. And on top of this, you had this. I mean, underneath all of this, you had this brewing discontent, right? Because one of the underlying problems with the Weimar Republic was that it got saddled with the Versailles Treaty from World War One. So basically, World War One happened, and Germany's economy absolutely cratered. Like you actually had yeah. I know the Weimar Republic was not socialist. I know that. What I'm trying to say is that they had a socialist party. They had a variety of different things. You had a shot. Yeah, you had a they had a shot at taking power in the country. And this is when it was kind of like most it was most probable. Like, you had the USSR had just been taken over by socialists. You had Germany in their democratic process making progress towards a socialist state. Things were looking really, really good. But what ended up happening was essentially there was a counter backlash to all of this. A backlash towards the queer people, a backlash towards the trans community, a backlash towards the socialists and communists. And this backlash was headed by Adolf Hitler. And I think one of the major things that happened, and I am kind of simplifying this for the sake of time and brevity, but the parties on the left were playing a hard line. They really wanted to win right there and then against like the more neoliberal or liberal elements of society that wanted to keep up with capitalism. And playing that hard line in that environment at that time proved to be a fatal mistake for them, because it allowed the Nazis to rise to power. Yeah, the Social Democrats betrayed you, but that's part of the point, right? Like, this is why I advocate for coalition building, like especially in a time that's very similar to the Weimar Republic. We need to get the Soc Dems to side with us this time, okay? Yeah, infighting in the left allowed the Nazis to gain power. Yes. And this basically turned into this backlash against trans people and queer people and socialists and communists fueled the Nazis' rise to power, and they were able to gain enough power to get Hitler elected as chancellor or named chancellor, and the rest is history, as they say. But I just think a little bit more context here would be helpful.